Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Every Calorie Counts podcast. So, apologies for the late upload onto Buzzsprout or onto our podcast platforms. Had a little bit of a hiccup, but you're getting two episodes today because I just uploaded the other one. So where are we at? Oh, I want to remind everyone that we are recording on Zoom, yeah. And this will be going up on YouTube if you want to see our faces. Yeah. What's up, Tim?
On that note, though, I haven't gotten my haircut since before I left for vacation. My beard is looking a little unkept. So if you're watching on YouTube, my apologies. Where I couldn't get in to see my fucking barber until Tuesday. It's only been so long that I've actually been going to a barber for 90% of our relationship. Christine would shave my head and shave my face at the same time. Seriously. And um before that, I don't even know. I don't even remember how I used to do it before that. But I literally, there were times where like Becky would shave my head for me when she was like 6 years old. Like I'd be sitting on like the side of the tub and she would just like stand in the tub and like shave my head. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even
That's
remember. But
hilarious.
for so long, I literally for since I was in high school, I shaved. Not that's actually not true, but for the most part, I shaved my head. So I like have like very little like in barber experience, right? So like there was a point here where I went to the barber and the guy's like, the guy that I get cut by now is Roman. He's like, what do you want as far as the haircut is concerned? I'm like, dude, I don't know. I have no idea what it's called. Like, I don't know the terminology. Like, I want it short here and I want it like to the skin here. And he's like, all right, dude, it's called a fade. You want a one on the top, zero on the sides. I'm like, okay, cool.
That's
And then
funny.
like we started to do the beard. So he like tells me like exactly what we're doing on the beard and everything. But it's like I don't understand how you people, well, obviously not you. For women, it's different. You guys spend like $6,000 on a
Hmm.
haircut. But I don't understand how dudes like it's like every week you got to go, which is fucking expensive, and then B, my internet connection is unstable.
You're
Great.
not cutting out.
Well, that bodes well for the future. But anyway, you also have to like book in advance. Like you got to go online and do the fucking thing now. And it's like you got it. Like when I was a
Okay,
kid,
but
I used to
try
just
being
go
a
to the
girl. The
barber shop.
amount of appointments I have to juggle. Well, hair I only do like two, three times a year because I just have a lot of hair and I like to keep it long. Um, Hair,
I mean, the
nails,
the waxing
waxing,
thing.
but also
Yeah.
waxing is so because I wax my eyebrows, I wax my armpits, I wax my lady parts, and everything grows at different speeds. So like I'm with my waxer like three times a month.
Well, but I feel like Christine goes more than that for some reason, just because she likes to spend money. And I forget who I was just talking to about this. I think maybe it was
Oh,
Alyssa.
facials
I forget
too.
who it
I've
was.
been into facials, taking care of my skin.
What?
That's
No,
another one.
waxing. Yeah, but how much does it cost to get waxed?
It depends how
But
much you
your
get.
junk.
Oh, that's probably like 80.
Yeah. So
No,
with the tip,
like
you're saying. She
70.
said 60. Yeah.
Yeah, 60 and
So
then yeah, exactly.
so wait, and how many times you guys going to get your junk waxed?
I go like 3 to 4 times a week. Not no, every 3 to 4 weeks.
How when are you
Three to
going,
four
babe?
times a week.
How often? Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
felt like it was way more than that. All right, fair
Yeah, but
enough.
there's other
Fine,
things that
whatever.
we have to get waxed. I don't know, but
I know that's the thing. The armpit she's
basically,
going
I
for, this
don't
she's
feel
going
bad. I
for.
don't feel
She's
bad.
got to go get her brows done. Have you seen her brows? When have you gotten your brows
Yeah,
done,
she's
dude?
Italian. Are you kidding me? My brows grow like it's their job. But yeah, no, I
Yeah.
don't feel bad for you.
All right. Anyway, so we can stop talking about you guys waxing your fucking armpits and your buttholes. Where are we going with this? Wait, how do we even
Okay.
start there? Oh yeah, my beard, my beautiful beard. I don't have an appointment until Tuesday, so everybody bear with me here. But it's still looking pretty good. It's still looking pretty good. Anyway, today's topic. So for all intents and purposes, we just came up with this topic 12 minutes ago, max.
Yeah.
That might even be a little bit of a stretch as far as the time frame is concerned. So it's one of those ones where maybe this one will be short, maybe it'll be sweet because we have touched on it before
Hmm.
multiple times. It just so happens I made an Instagram post on this, about whatever 20 minutes ago.
Hmm.
But it's also something that I think has been more and more and more part of my process with clients, and more of our processes. We're kind of onboarding clients. And is one thing that I guess, probably should be spoken about, especially as it relates to our clients listening to this podcast and being able to get the most benefit from it in terms of like why we're doing certain things, right? And expanding on that as best we can. So it really comes back to, I guess we could open it up with the concept of what is best. Is it, as far as the nutritional approach that we take with our clients, or the nutritional approach that your coach might be taking with you, is it going to be macro-based plans? Is it going to be meal plans? Is it going to be, other more kind of, I don't want to call it extravagant, exotic, things like fucking keto, and which I've used plenty of times. I have clients on keto right now. Is it going to be intermittent fasting, which again might sound like it's like this, this is stupid. I have clients doing intermittent fasting right now. Is it going to be, one meal a day nonsense that you see a lot of people do, and has gained a little bit of popularity over the course of the last couple of years? And it's like, it's easy to say that's stupid. I have at least one client doing one meal a day right now. It's one of those things where it's like there's so many different options. And I feel like when you start to look at things, I showed you that post that I made. Like we were training together, what, Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and
Mhm.
I showed you that post that I made where I screwed up the
Oh
the
yeah.
uh comment that I made. It was it
Yeah.
was it was a it was a post that some fucking nut job made about fasting. Panda something or other is his name on there, the Panda program or something. He made this post about fasting, talking about how it increases your metabolism, it increases your testosterone, it does all these things, where the post just was completely totally inaccurate from an actuality standpoint, from a scientific standpoint. It was entirely inaccurate. But the bottom line is, I made the comment on there, unbeknownst to myself, that we were going to be having this conversation here, that it's like, hey, fasting might have a place within anybody's process, but when you start to create this concept around fasting, where it's this nutritional strategy to be able to live your life around, or that's going to bring you some sort of a miraculous result, that's where I start to have a problem with things. And we can pretty much put that onto any one of these concepts, including just tracking your macros and or being on a meal plan. Those are the two things I think we can focus on more than anything else, because
Mhm.
those are the two common practices within our industry, right? And if there's anybody listening to this that is a coach, or that is being coached by a coach, I can guarantee you that 90% of the time that you've been with that coach, and 90% of the time that you've been working with a client, you've probably relied on solely macros and or meal plans, right? And again, I think there's something to be said about all these different approaches that we take, and where they fit in terms of context within that particular individual or client's process, right? Where it's like, hey, and I guess the ultimate point that we're trying to make here is that, periodization is key, right? And there's always going to be a period of times where this might work better, that might work better, this makes sense within this context, etc. And we don't have to live and die by one strategy. And I think that's where we go wrong within this category, right? Within this industry, is that you have so many people that will make things. I've seen multiple posts in just the last couple of days, right? Where people are like, well, meal plans are better than macros because of X, Y, and Z, or macros are better than meal plans because of X, Y, and Z. And I think when it really comes down to it, the one thing that we lack still within this industry is, first and foremost, less ego, right? The ego is what's driving these things, right?
Mhm.
But it's all, and then obviously content production, right? We got to produce content. I kind of felt that way when I was making the post that I made. I literally almost posted within the caption, this is solely for content purposes. This in the business is what they call a call to action, a CTA. Please click the link in my bio and like my shit. I erased it because I felt like Kevin would get mad at me. But
Okay.
nonetheless, the point is, within this industry, I was driving to something. There's ego, there is content that we have to take into consideration. But what that basically does is it starts to put us in a position where we've all been against, right? Like I would say there's nobody out there, there's nobody out there that's touting, I take a cookie cutter approach, right? There was
Mhm.
years upon years within this, social media market, within this concept, with this industry, where everybody was so adamantly against cookie cutter approaches, right? Like those approaches that was the same thing, where people are just copying, pasting plans, and there was no customization, right? But yet we're sitting here having a conversation about people saying this way's the best, this way's the best, this way's the best. how is that customizing the approach for the client in any way, shape, or form?
Exactly.
And then when you're on social media and you're starting to talk about this is the best, this is the best, this is the best, which we and myself, I've done it before with macros, but I think even within that concept, I can almost guarantee you that if I went back to those episodes, because I can think podcasts, I can think Instagram lives I've been on, I can think other people's podcasts that I've been on where I touted the concept of macro counting over anything else. But even within those moments, I would always fall back on the reality. But we also have clients that do meal plans. There's also times where meal plans work. Here are the reasons why, right? So it's never just a one size fits all. But again, I think where I'm really trying to drive with this is the reality that it's like, hey, all of these things are tools within the toolbox. When we whip them out and use that tool, is going to be indicative of not just a person, right? But over the length of a person's time with a coach, there should be different methods that are used for different reasons in different
Mhm.
situations.
Yeah. Yeah. My brain just stopped working for a second. I was gonna
I was
say
gonna say
something.
I was gonna take a breath. I thought you were gonna go. You made it awkward. Way to go, Marina. Way to be a good
Um,
co-host there.
yeah,
Now let me try real quick. Let me think of something. She's got nothing. She's got nothing. So I would honestly say right now, trying to put a little bit more like I guess you say substance to this, right? I would say it's easy to say this stuff, right? I think that's the biggest thing here, right? Like it's always easy. And this is something that's been bugging me recently about a lot of people, right? Like there have been coaches out there that have been talking for a long time, long time. And I've also have gotten even relatively close to some of the people that have mentored under some of these coaches and consider some of these coaches to be true and honest friends and have worked with these coaches for long periods of time. And I've actually worked with these coaches. I know I'm being a little vague here and maybe not making as much sense anymore. But the bottom line is there are people within this industry that are considered to be really, really good coaches that have now taken on different, authority points or they're mentoring, they are coaching, they're doing functional health, they're doing bodybuilding, they're doing all these different things, right? And they talk and talk and talk. But I'm like, dude, I've worked with you. You're saying all this stuff, right? You're generating all this income based on you saying all these things, but you don't do any of that shit. Not when I worked with you, didn't do any of that shit. You didn't fucking you just put me on X amount of drugs. I didn't tell you what I was comfortable with. I didn't tell you what budget I had. I didn't tell you what experiences that I had with what drugs. You just put me on fucking drugs. In fact,
Mhm.
one person in particular that I can think of just fucking, first time ever on growth hormone, didn't know what the fuck, it's just, hey, here's some, take 2 IUs a day. It's like, I didn't even tell you I could fucking afford growth hormone. I didn't tell you I've
Mhm.
ever taken growth hormone. I didn't, right? It was just like, here's growth hormone in your plan. Take this. Here's this, and this in your plan. Take this, right? It's like, there's no conversation about what I had experience with before. It was just there. Now that same person is like, oh, safety this, safety that. Talk to the person, get blood work. You never asked me for a shred of blood work. And I worked with you for fucking months on top of months on top of months. And it's one of those things where it's like the things that people talk about and preach about are not the things that they're practicing. So again, to give some more substantive or some more substantial, I guess you could say real world concept to this, right? Idea of periodization around the way that we're utilizing our nutrition, right? We have clients right now, which is what Marie and I were talking about before we hopped on here, that we're onboarding, where we started to use things like, we'll use our typical macro structure where obviously it's protein, carbs, fats, fiber,
Mhm.
calorie, things of this nature. But we're starting to within certain circumstances, because context is always important within these conversations, adding, we did a plan for somebody yesterday where she has PCOS. um She's not somebody that has a ton of experience as far as her health, wellness, and fitness and managing things. So she wants to do macros, but or we at least feel like macros is best for her. But so we basically set her up with a thing where, based on her background, some of the things that she's dealt with from a health perspective, where she's coming from right now, we gave her a set number as far as carbohydrates are concerned. We fiddled with the concept of a minimum maximum number as far as fats are concerned, but we stuck with the idea, right? We stuck with the idea of this being a mandatory number, if you would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, fats. So fats and carbs are set at a mandatory limit, and then we have protein being a minimum number. So then we have protein. We want them to hit this a minimum amount, but if that particular client wants to go over that protein threshold, and then we'll
Mhm.
have the conversation with that client that says, "Hey, if you're feeling hungry on these starting macros, feel free to start with, let's say, 20 grams of protein per X amount of meals, which will help you hit your total protein content,
Mhm.
right, for the day. And if you're still feeling hungry thereafter, maybe on day 3, 4, 5 of the plan, give it some time to be able to assess it. But now you could say, okay, let's go up to maybe whatever, 25, 27, maybe even 30 grams of protein per meal, right? And start to, essentially do the same thing you were doing, just make
Yeah.
your protein servings a little bit bigger to generate a little bit more satiety, improve hunger, or improve hunger responses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So that's just one glimpse into the things that we've been doing. But there's also a lot of clients, and I'm sure will be listening to this, that know that, they've worked with me directly where, we've pulled back, right? We've taken, the one thing that I would say is very burnout, right? People get burnt out. The one thing that I'm very, very proud of is the length of time that I'm able to work with a client. I just had a
Mhm.
client drop off. I was telling you about my dude Sebastian, who's been with me for literally just about that 3 year mark. We're literally right at the 3 year mark. And he decided to, that this, school was going to be more like life things were more important, which is totally respectable. I totally understand it. He was able to we were able to do a ton of work with him going from 135 to 190. He's very, very consider him a friend, let alone a client. But anyway, the point is, like, some of these people are with us for so long now that it's almost like, dude, if we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, like, I get burnt out with that shit, let alone, and I've been doing it for 15 years or whatever it is, let alone somebody else that's only been doing this for a year that has so much going on in terms of their young life and they want to enjoy friends, they want to do this, they want to do that. Are we really helping somebody create a healthy relationship with food? I did air quotes there, with healthy relationship for anybody that's listening, with
Mhm.
food, if we're not practicing, eating outside of this concept or confines of, a macro based plan or a meal plan. Are we really helping somebody manage their stress, right, long term? If they're always I don't want to say a victim of, if they're always locked into
Mhm.
putting all their food in this tracking thing and they can't have this because it's going over their carbs, they can't have that because it's going over their fat. There's stress in that. There's definitely
Mhm.
stress in that. And that's managing our stress is something that we've always talked about so much. So again, I think bringing it back to the point that I'm trying to make here is, periodization is a necessity. And it's something that we talk about a lot, something that a lot of people preach about. But, when do they use any type of periodization as far as the diet is concerned? Because I'm telling you right now, periodization is not just, well, they were eating a lot of food. Now they're eating very little food. That works from a strategy standpoint in terms of an end result as far as their physique is concerned. But are you really periodizing anything within that, or using the same exact mechanisms to get to that higher number versus getting to that lower number, right? Like, why can't there be something in between there where we're quote unquote periodizing from a standpoint of, hey, you know what? You've learned a lot through this initial push up. You've learned a lot through this initial dieting phase or whatever it is. Let's go ahead. We're at a solid point right now where we're if we take away this tracker for whatever it might be, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it's going to be, it's an awesome opportunity for you to kind of take a deep breath, right? To be able to enjoy some, a weekend here and there, to be able to enjoy some time with, friends, family, etc., and not be so wound tight because of this.
Mhm.
But with that being said, we still need to practice things, right? We still need to practice, how are we looking at our food within this context, right? Because I think so many times and for so long, we've placed so much value on food around calories, around macros, around, whether that food is healthy, unhealthy, how's this food going to affect my physique, right? So now we need to start to take a step back and say, what is the true value of food here? Is it, the way that it affects the look of my physique? Or is it the way that it affects our body on a physiological and biological level, right? Is it fuel, or is it something that's going to affect my physique in some, and to some extent, those do go together, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, if I'm looking at food in a way where just how is this going to affect my physique and my physique outcomes, fat loss, muscle gain, etc., I could easily look at just white rice. I could easily look at just chicken breast. I could easily look at just egg whites. I could easily look at just fucking these very like low nutrients totaled foods, right? These essentially too low satiety foods in some
Mhm.
cases there, right? Like cream of rice, etc. Right? And it's like, if I want to take a step back from all that physique concept and I want to start to talk about my health more realistically, which should be a long-term goal for all of us, whether we're competing right now, whether we are a general lifestyle client just looking to lose weight, gain weight, etc., right? Overall, eventually it should come back down to utilizing whatever lifestyle we're most interested in right now to add to our life in a healthier way long term. Well, then we have to start to talk about is cream of rice better or is oatmeal better? Oatmeal is a product I've taken a lot of people off of in recent years because the fiber will slow it down. You won't be able to eat as much food. I'd rather have you cream of rice where it's easily digested, right? It's a low allergen food, yada yada yada, all this different stuff, right? The gluten that's going to be found in the cheaper version of oats that people are going to buy, but at the same time, oatmeal from a health standpoint probably going to be, not probably, it is a hell of a lot better than cream of rice, unless there is some allergy, or unless there is some thing that we have to look at per that individual client. The reality is the fiber that you're going to get in oatmeal is going to help you manage your blood glucose. Help improve things like regulating your digestion, your bowel movements, help with reduced inflammation. It is a better overall nutrient profile. And again, we're starting to look at from like a vitamin and mineral standpoint. And if we're starting to look at the reality behind food and what it's offering us from a general health and fueling standpoint versus the physique outcomes, then I'm probably going to take a food that gives me, and I know we can talk caloric density and all that long term, but this oatmeal has a little bit of fat, a little bit of a good amount of carbohydrate, and a good amount of protein, all wrapped in one food source. You can't tell me that that's not a generally healthy substance to have in your plan at all times. So again, we start to take a look at food from a general health component. We can start to put a little bit more of a different spin as far as value on food is concerned, and probably long term the best viewpoints and values on food, right? That we're starting to build, where it's like, even things like, throughout the course of the, instead of white rice, quinoa, right? And the value that quinoa can provide for us from all different standpoints, or other ancient grains, right? Where we're always so, gluten is bad, gluten is bad, gluten is bad. A lot of gluten is bad when it comes to the idea, and I say is bad, but like when it comes to the idea of where we're getting most of the gluten from, with especially in the United States of America, the way that food is developed, the way that food is legitimately made and molded and put together and shit. Like a lot of that's going to come back to processed foods, right? That are containing a shit ton of added gluten, right? But when we start to look at the way that gluten might naturally be part of some of these food sources like grains and ancient grains, specifically things like or even things that might be a little bit like, what's another thing that I could think of where gluten, not to slow my rant down because I'm on a fucking roll now. I don't know, but there's Ezekiel bread is a good one. Ezekiel bread's a good one. That's not gluten free, but it's a totally awesome food source. But again, once we start to look at these things now throughout this lens of what's generally healthy for me, right? Because I think the fear when it comes to pulling away some of these trackers, right? The fear when it comes to pulling away the concept of understanding in totality what I'm consuming, right? It's going to come back to that physique-based concept, right? That fear is going to be attached to, am I going to gain weight? But am I eating too much? How many calories am I eating? Oh, I feel like I ate too much. I feel heavy. I feel bloated. I feel all these different things, right? And it's like, well, slow down, dude. Slow down, dude. Sometimes, right, we're going to be in certain situations where, because of maybe the cultural aspect of somebody's lifestyle, because of celebrations, because of, you're going to feel full, you're going to feel a little blood. But if you're falling back on, so maybe that's normal too, by the way, like feeling a little bloated, normal. Having gas once in a while, like you're gonna fucking fart, like that's just the reality of it. You know what I mean? It's normal. Like, you know what I mean? Like your shit not being on a specific schedule all the time in your life, it's okay for that to happen once in a while. You're traveling, dude. You're on a different fucking your circadian rhythms because you're in across the country, whatever it is. Like these things happen. They happen, right? And it's not like being outside of that for whatever period of time is not the end of the world. You don't need a GI map. You don't need a Dutch test. You're not dying. You're not going to get fat. But anyway, the idea here is if we are wait, what was my point? I was making a good point.
I don't know what your point was, but I'll take that to butt in and kind of give, because I was thinking like when you were talking about, choosing foods like for health as opposed to the outcome of your physique, I immediately thought to when I got COVID, what, a month ago, September. And I was reversing from a show and I had done pretty well up until I got sick, and like my appetite was up and down. I was nauseous here and there. And you were basically like, just eat when you're hungry, don't track, but choose good foods. And for a period, I was, not choosing good foods. I was just eating kind of what was comfortable. Like, okay, I'm finally hungry, but I don't want to eat that. I'm just going to have crackers and cheese. Like, that
Yeah,
was kind of my go to. What?
For all intents and purposes, though, and I want you to finish, but for all intents and purposes, it is, it's different when you're sick just because, and we talked about this too, I think, and I've talked about everybody, because like you're not hungry, you're not hungry, you're not
Yeah, but
hungry, so
I'm
you don't
getting to
eat,
a
and
point
then all of a sudden
where,
you're starving.
yeah, exactly. But I'm getting to a point where as as I practice, choosing better foods, I felt better too, obviously. But in the back of my head, something had clicked where it's like, oh wait, like, yeah, sure, I was reversing from a show. I had just, been dieting for a while. I was on a meal plan at the end of prep. So it was really weird for me to shift that mindset to not be so physique outcome, like physique thinking leaner, 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 whatever. And just think like, oh well, the food, there's so much more to food than just how I look. And like it's crazy to me that like I even thought that, because as a coach, I'm saying those things to my clients and stuff. But for me to like really understand it and be like, oh wait, like I'm not in prep right now. My goal isn't just physique based. I just need to feel good. I'm like, oh, so like there is more to it. So I feel like that anxiety was relieved or released, whatever the fucking word is. When I realized like it's not that like one dimensional when it comes to
Yeah. And
and
that
just
was my point that I was making too. Go ahead, but you remind me of my point. Go ahead.
yeah, so I wanted to like circle back to all these different approaches. Like, yeah, I've done meal plan, yeah, I've done macros, yeah, I've done weeks where I'm not tracking anything. So it all, like you were saying, it's individual to each person, to each personality, to each like time in their life that they're in. But on top of that, like, yeah, like periods and like people are going to be different at different times of their life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the point that I was making there was like when we get so obsessed about physique outcomes and, calories and macros and all this different stuff, I think sometimes we lose concept of the reality where it's like, dude, nobody gets fat from eating fucking quinoa and fucking grass-fed beef and fucking, sweet potatoes and fucking salmon and fucking veggies and fruit and, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like when we're talking about looking at good quality whole food sources, right? In a lot of cases, single ingredient foods. And even listen, everybody always talks about that too. Where, and I don't want to go off into left field here. I'm making a point, but like no processed foods, yada
Mm-hmm.
yada. Our food list has processed foods in it for all intents and purpose, right?
Yeah.
Our yeah, one like when we start to talk about processed foods, like even cream of rice, granted it's a single ingredient food, it's still processed food. So even looking at it from just the perspective of we have right now, like I have a lot of cereal in people's plan, but like the one thing that we try to err towards is for most people on a general plan, right? Is like organic based, high fiber cereals, and we have some options there as far as brands are concerned. Where that even that cereal, right, which a lot of people would have a problem with, understandably so, but in this case, it's easy, thing. It's a convenient thing. It's a process to shit, but at the same time, it's got a lot of good ingredients in there too that we could
Mm-hmm.
kind of take away from in terms of the brands that we're using. But anyway, the bottom line there is nobody gets fat from eating, these types of foods and having a generally conscious, mindset. That's not where people go wrong. That's not where people get, fat. We don't have an obesity problem in this country or in this world, because people are eating too much ground beef, because people are eating too much chicken, because people are eating too much fucking even white rice and fucking quinoa and whatever else we talked about here
Potatoes.
today, Ezekiel bread, potatoes, yeah, yada, yada, yada. Nobody gets fat from that shit. And people can say all day long where it's like, no, I have a really good appetite. No, you have no fucking clue what you're talking about. Your appetite has led you to eat ice cream. Your appetite's led you to eat pizza. Your appetite's led you to eat garbage, right? And that garbage, and again, we can continue to like use air quotes here and say it's garbage. In reality, again, there's always circumstances where even that garbage is going to fit. I have a 4-year-old that's legitimately, completely, and totally
Did
underweight,
you say
right?
4-year-old?
She's 4. She was 4.
Oh, I thought you meant like a client.
Oh no, yeah, no, June, where but it's, and I have clients where this fits too. One of them where it fits, where it's like, hey, dude, you got to stop looking at food as this thing that's good or bad. You need
Mm-hmm.
calories, and you can't fit. I have a client. It's a small, tiny little thing, and I actually work with the individual's mother too. Small, tiny little thing, and their mother is in their late 50s. So it's one of those things where it's like this isn't changing for you anytime soon. This is part of your genetic makeup, but this person's had amenorrhea for a long time, all these different things. It's like, dude, you need to gain some fucking weight. You are visibly fucking, and not only that, we have some blood work and some things that are showing that there might be some malnourishment going on there.
Mhm.
But it's like, I can only feed you so much as far as this good, healthy food is concerned. They're both, the mother and the daughter, are anal about good, healthy food. So anal about it, and so anal about tracking, and so anal about the calories and all that, where it's like, you got to stop that and like just look at food from the perspective of, this is what I need right now. What's better for me?
Mhm.
Having ice cream, having a burger and fries from this place right now, because it's dense as far as
Yeah.
calories are concerned. And it only costs me this much space in my little tiny stomach where I can actually get the calories in that I need, right? What's more important in those circumstances? You know what I mean? So it's again, we could go back and, if we're going to label things as garbage food or not garbage food, but again, when you're eating that, type of food, you have to understand that it's extremely calorically dense relative to, even if you made those things at home. There's another conversation I have with people all the time where it's like, Five Guys is a perfect example. I've looked this up and I've Googled it multiple times, even though I can't give you exact numbers off the top of my head. Let's just say it's whatever, 2,000 calorie meal to be able to get a double cheeseburger from Five Guys with fries, right? And it's probably even a small fries at Five Guys because you know how big those fucking fries are.
Oh
So let's
yeah.
just say it's like a 2,000 calorie meal, and that may or may not be accurate. But then, if you made that same meal at home, where you made yourself a double cheeseburger with a 93% or 90% lean ground beef, you used even like fat-free cheese slices. If you want to throw some cheese on there, use a Martin's potato bun, because if you don't use Martin potato buns on your burger, you're a fucking lunatic. If you use, you chop up some potatoes and you throw them in the air fryer that we all have
Mhm.
nowadays, which is a great convenience for us, you can make yourself fucking, 400 or 500 grams of potatoes, enough to give you a big giant bloated belly. You could have even fucking two of those burgers with like 200 grams of beef split up into multiple different patties, right? And you're still going to come out with a meal there that's probably a third at most, a third to a quarter of the calories that you're going to be getting from Five Guys. And here's the thing, and the point, when it really comes down to, even though I said I'm making a point 97 times today, the idea here is that you are getting something that's so much more, there's so much more volume, right, at a lower caloric intake, right, that it's going to be so filling that you couldn't possibly over consume it to the extent in which you need to worry about getting substantially fat. Now, listen, everybody can overeat at different times, at different points in different situations, right? Where hunger signaling is up and down for different reasons. But the fact of the matter is here that, again, if you were sticking to good quality foods over and over and over again, or again, lack of, let's verbiage, right? Not necessarily good quality foods, but foods that are very low in calories relative to the amount of surface area they provide,
Mhm.
relative to the volume that they are, right? It's going to be so hard to continuously overconsume that it would be very difficult for you to gain body fat, right? Because it costs calories to be able to ultimately build body fat, right? It
Yeah.
costs calories to be able to get there. You can't have a pound of body fat without over consuming X amount of calories. That's a fucking fact. Nobody can argue that. It's a fucking fact. Anybody that's arguing that is fucking retarded. They have no idea what they're talking about, right? It requires X amount of overconsumption to be able to get there, right? So at the end of the day, if you're consuming these things where it's very difficult to overconsume, just be sheer volume of what you're consuming and the amount of space that we have in our stomach, it's going to be ultimately very difficult for you to even attain a pound of body fat. You know what I mean? So again, we start to look at food through the spectrum of, again, different, I guess you say, concepts attached to food, different ways that this food might be valuable, right? As opposed to just looking at it from the idea of white rice digests easy, chicken breast is protein, this is an easy source of carbs, or it doesn't come with a lot of fat or, protein, so it fits within the
Yeah.
macros. You know what I mean? And we start to open it up to all these different things. We're building more education around our food. We're building more of a long-term sustainable concept around what food is. Eventually, Tim's not going to be there. Eventually, Marina's not going to be there. Eventually, Chronometer shouldn't be there. My Fitness Pal, or whatever you're using, your meal plan shouldn't be there, whatever it is. And there's going to be now a knowledge base that you can fall back on, where it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm so used to this. This is my habits, this is my
Mhm.
routine, this is my lifestyle, to just eat good quality foods. And I'm not necessarily, just because I'm not checking with Marina or Tim or using a chronometer, I'm not just going to now go eat McDonald's every day. I'm not just going to now go eat, garbage every day. I'm going to stick to this concept that I know has worked for me a long time and allowed me to maintain where I'm at, which, for all intents and purposes, the hardest thing to do right? And what coaches, when it comes to working with a coach, right, you're paying somebody to help you get a result. You're paying somebody, you're checking in with them weekly, and sometimes there's this feeling of I got to do this to change it up for this person. I got to do that to give them something new. I got to do this to keep that person focused, right? And I know that I've been there, and it's true. Sometimes you do have to make changes just to keep a client engaged, right?
Mhm.
But the reality is, the thing that we do the least as coaches with clients is maintain, because there's nothing sexy about that. There's nothing that's going to draw, good content out of that. There's nothing that's going to draw additional clientele out of that, right? You're not helping this person get this crazy physique that you could post, and then you get all these other clients. You're just maintaining. But at the same time, right? That's probably, whoa, you just zoomed in. Did you see
Yeah,
that?
what was that? That was weird.
I don't know. That was weird, but it felt like you were coming after me. But after, for all intents and purposes, probably the most important thing to learn is how to maintain or how to sustain. Because at the end of the day, again, we don't have an issue now in America specifically when it comes to weight loss. Like we just don't. And I don't know about for the world, but specifically the research shows we don't have an issue as far as weight loss is concerned in America. We don't have it, right? People lose pounds by the fucking dozens every single year, right? What we have an issue with is those same people that lost that weight gaining that weight back because they did it in unsustainable formats. They did it with unsustainable habits. They did it in ways where they're like, I'm going to go to the gym 6 times a week. No, you're not, you fucking idiot. You're only going to do that for a period of time and then you're going to fall off. I'm going to go do all this cardio. No, you're not, D-bag. You're only going to do that for a certain period of time before you fall off. I'm going to cut all my carbs. Shut up, for Christ's sake. None of that shit
Yeah.
is going to lead you down a path where you can ultimately get the result that you want and again, sustain that result. And what are we doing it for if we're not looking to sustain it? So again, this is an educational thing where it really comes back to truly and honestly helping somebody live their best lifestyle, right? As opposed to, again, the sexy thing that sells, trying to help this person get this transformation. All that stuff should be part of your experience too, if that's what your goals are, right? But at the same time, it's one of those things where if that's it, if that's the only thing that a coach is providing for you, if that's the only thing that you guys are talking about, then you are going to be part of those statistics where people are gaining that weight back. You
Exactly.
are going to ultimately fall short in terms of what the value is that that coach gave you. It's great they helped you lose 20 pounds, but if you gained 30 pounds in the back end of that, guess what? It didn't mean shit. It was completely and totally invaluable. Wait, not invaluable, unvaluable, unvaluable.
I don't know,
It was
but
non-valuable.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think you've pretty much said it and summed it up. Like the answer to the question of like what is best, is it macros? Is it meal plan? Is it keto? Is it paleo? I don't even know any others. But the answer to that question is just the one that you can sustain over time. And while, yeah, there will be periods of maybe going keto, yeah, there may be periods of intermittent fasting. But ultimately, when you take a step back and look at the big picture, what can you sustain for years on end? What is it of like a realistic lifestyle for you when it comes to food? And it's going to look different every period in your life
When
and
it
for
comes
every
down to like
personality. What?
when it comes down to like the real nuanced stuff, right? Where it's like, keto or like, intermittent fasting or even paleo to a certain extent, like all of those things might have, again, periodization, right? All those things might have the periods like you were talking about where they are applicable and they're applicable for very specific reasons, right? Like I just had a client who we got, blood work back and his insulin was through the fucking roof and his HSCRP, his high sensitivity C-reactive protein, which is an inflammatory marker, right? It's indicative of cardiovascular health. They were both through the fucking roof, through the roof. And actually, his HbA1c was really low. So I'm thinking we caught it early because it's that insulin that's coming up that's causing that HbA1c to be low. But we're having to overproduce insulin to be able to cover that number as far as. So we're probably right around the corner from that HbA1c spiking. But anyway, we're starting to see this early signs of insulin resistance, and then the inflammation that's coming from all this glucose and insulin function. And it's like, hey, dude, maybe we need to try something like a keto-based diet for a period of time to be able to bring down some of that inflammation, to be able to reset your ability to be able to manage all this glucose. And it's going to be something that works immediately, right? Or maybe I have a client where, the whole goal with her right now is to drive up calories, drive up calories, drive up calories, right? And put her in a better spot metabolically, put her in a better spot to be able to grow as far as an off season is concerned, put her in a better spot as far as, internal, honestly, even her relationship with food and stuff like that. It's almost like, hey, she struggled with so long with being so low in calories that it's like, hey, we need to look at this in a little bit of, I want you to be so satiated and have such a fucking low appetite because you're eating so much food that it's almost like we can't continue to push food. That's when you know you're ready to be able to diet again, potentially, right? But we also, to be able to do that, I set her up with 2 days a week where she's intermittent fasting to be able to, or at least maintain, a healthier level of digestion, or to give her GI a break, right? To be able to drive up hunger a little bit on those days, to be able to make it easier to have a lower caloric set point on those days because you're only eating within this window, right? So it's like, that could be applicable in those scenarios. I have a client right now that's on keto, right? Just based on the fact that, to be honest with you, her blood work actually came back immaculate, right? She's actually on a birth control too. Birth hormones, like everything came back fucking great, fantastic. I wish I had more clients that had that kind of blood work at her age. But the reality is she just didn't respond to a normal diet. We worked together for probably like 2 years now. The first few months we worked together, there was just zero movement. And I don't know if it's because she wasn't as diligent, she wasn't as strict to the plan, right? But we eventually tried this, we tried that. The one thing that we tried and worked was keto. We just had a really good result from keto, and it was literally just me throwing fucking darts, hoping to fucking hit a bullseye. And sure as shit, she went from 180 pounds down to like 130 pounds. We reverse dieted her out of that, and she was only got back up to. We did reverse diet her out, and she got up to like closer to 150. It was like 145 to 148 is where she was maintaining, which is great coming down from 180. But then we just started dieting again. When she got to a place where we started to see that scale creep up, we were probably like, I don't know, fucking 10 months removed from dieting, 8 months removed from dieting, somewhere in that range. So we took our time off. We just started dieting again like 2 weeks ago, back on the keto. Boom, like immediately. Like we actually brought down her calories traditionally, no movement whatsoever. And then we reversed her, we put her right back into a keto thing, same exact calories that she was at. And then boom, right out of the gate, like 4 pounds down. And it's just been rolling ever since.
Now
So it's one of those things
this
where,
is just me asking you a question. How often do you see like people like that who, I don't know, it could be maybe, I don't know, did you say she was on birth control?
yeah, it could be that
Like, yeah,
because,
how
go ahead.
often do you see that people don't budge, but like actually budge when you do something like out of left field?
It's well, I think that could be multiple things that we should talk about there, where it's like, is it the person's like whatever physiology or the way that their body's working, or is it, again, you have that conversation with somebody where it's like, hey, listen, this isn't working, it hasn't been working, like we're not getting a result, let's try something new to be able to get this result. And then all of a sudden that person on their end is like, oh yeah, realistically I haven't been doing this well enough,
Yeah, they
I
kind
haven't
of
been
lock
trying hard
in or
enough.
whatever.
Yeah, and
Okay.
they haven't really communicated that to you, they're just within their own head saying that. And then all of a sudden you give them this new approach, and now they're locked in because you had that conversation with them, and they're afraid of like being fired by their coach or whatever you want to call it, right? So now they actually put in the effort. And it's not necessarily the fact that we're on keto now, it's just the fact that they decided to refocus,
Yeah.
and actually put in the
A
effort
little
to
bit
actually
of
get the
a
result.
placebo effect.
100%, exactly. So it could be a little bit of both, but I have multiple women, that had struggled with things like, because remember, birth control, the one thing that we can't do blood work at least efficiently to be able to look at somebody's cortisol rhythm, right, and how maybe dysregulated their cortisol function is. If we did a urinalysis or a Dutch test for that, or even a 4-point saliva test, it would probably be a little bit of a better understanding of where they're at. So again, that might be one caveat there, where it's like, this person's on birth control, everything looks good, but is things like cortisol dysregulation maybe playing a role with her carbohydrate metabolism, to where it's like being on keto now is a little bit more effective? Potentially that could be the case. I have another one, same thing. We worked together for a long period of time. She's actually one of my more tenured clients. And she is somebody where very, very high earner as far as her work is concerned, right? She's one that travels constantly. She's traveling like literally in the next 3 weeks, actually. She checked in yesterday. In the next 3 weeks, she travels 3 times for work. And then one time, this is in 3 weeks. So she's traveling out 4 different times, 3 times for work. And then on the back end of that, within that 3 week schedule, she's leaving for a vacation too. So it's one of those things where it's like, travels a lot for work, right? High earner, mother of three. And it's that type of person where it's like, if I were to pull away the gym, she'd fucking lose her mind, right? Lose her fucking mind. Wants to be training, wants to be doing this, wants, literally sends her check in all the time at like fucking 3:45 in the morning, 4 a.m. And I'm like, slow down. Don't ever send me a check in at 4 a.m. again. Sleep more. Like, why are you up at 4 a.m.? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Always has the reason for it. But it's like, she's a high stress individual probably producing a fucking like there are environments where keto makes sense based on the the easy logical concept of what that is in terms of carbohydrate metabolism or lack thereof and running off of those ketones, right? So for her, same exact thing. We've tried it traditionally over and over and over again. We've tried multiple different things, all this different shit, right? And the one thing that really works, keto. Boom.
Mhm.
Right. So it's one of those things where it's like you start to, see that over time where it's like, oh, and remember, this is the experience part of coaching, right? Where it's like, oh, this I can start to group people into these different categories, at least on the surface level, right? Obviously, everybody's different internally, but once we start to like, put people into these different groups on that surface level or superficially, we could say high stress, like crazy, all this different stuff. And it's like maybe within that, somebody would benefit from keto, and you can always try that and see what the outcome is based on the experience that you have with other people in those similar circumstances. But yeah, I would say it's not as often as people would like to make it. Like there's no like master manipulation going on here or some shit like that. It's just like, hey, we've tried everything else here.
Exactly.
It's not working. Let's try this. And like I said before, I'm throwing a dart in the dark. You know what I mean? Trying to hit a bullseye. It's one of those things. And I'll have that conversation with people too, where it's like, hey, we could try this. Is it going to work? I don't fucking know. Honestly, I
Hmm.
have no fucking clue. Right. But based on these reasons, this is why we're logically putting this in place to see if it works. So it's more of an educated guess, if you would, in terms of giving something a shot. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So yeah, I think again, my point there before we wrapped it up was just kind of touching on like all these little nuances and where these things might work. I put carb cycling on that thing. Cycling is something that everybody knows that we use that when we're dieting, right? Even
Hmm.
to the lesser extent for a general population person, it's been shown a ton in research that if we have, and there's always back and forth in research. So there's also some research now that's come out recently where they say it doesn't have that much of an impact, but you work with the experience that you have and the way it's helped more than the large majority of clients. There's a ton of research out there that shows that if you have anywhere between like 48 hours to 48 hours plus of higher or closer to maintenance caloric intake, it'll mitigate some of the side effects of dieting, including but not limited to even things like hunger, right? Let alone the physiological things that we have to be concerned with while dieting. So most of our clients are going to be set up somewhere along the lines of like a 5-day low, maybe 2-day high. Maybe it's I also like the idea of you know um 3 high days per week, 4 low days per week. And the way that I map that out is Monday, Tuesday, you're eating a low diet. Wednesday, you have a midweek refeed there to be able to maintain performance in the gym and whatnot. And then you have 2 more low days, and then it's back to Saturday and Sunday high days. So I have those, plans primarily set up like that: Monday through Friday, Saturday and Sunday, or
Hmm.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday high, Thursday, Friday low, Saturday and Sunday high. Right? Does that make sense?
That would be 5 high days, right? Monday,
Yeah. So
Tuesday,
our low,
low.
Wednesday's high. Yeah.
Wednesday. Okay, so yeah, four
Thursday,
high.
Friday low,
Yeah,
Saturday, Sunday high. Yeah.
yeah.
So, but I was just saying, like, am I even are people following that? But anyway, bottom line is that carb cycling approach is something that I use just about every single time
Hmm.
I diet at this point. Back in the day, there used to be more aggressive, and some people still do follow more aggressive, like low, medium, high, low, medium, high, or like these types of schedules. That's fine too. We've all seen that work to a certain extent. But again, that's going to be primarily dieting. Maybe in an off-season setting, I'll have somebody again 5 days at a more moderate caloric intake, and then 2 days really high calories. And that's just an opportunity to push somebody's overall average caloric intake without having to make them suffer too often with really, really high calorie intakes. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So it's one of those things where everything is applicable within the context of a certain situation, right? If there's one thing Austin taught me very early on, is that context is necessary. And when we're talking about understanding anything, that's why I've really pulled back over the course of the last few years with judging people when they're posting something. I know they're working with somebody, and then you get that DM where it's like somebody saying like, oh, look at this fucking idiot's doing. I can't believe they're working with this person. It's like, whoa, dude, you have no idea what the conversations are like on the back end or what the context is like. Sometimes people, I have it happen all the time where clients are posting things very notoriously, training videos, and they're doing something when they're training, and I'm like, oh fuck, dude, I gotta repost this. And then I have to DM them like, you're doing all this shit wrong. You know what I mean? Like, let's
Hmm.
do it better, but I'll still repost you, just so it's not, it's respecting. But you got it. So it's how many times as a client it's like that telephone game, right? How many times has a client posted something where they're not really like displaying things the right way? They're not really like, coming with the proper context or providing the proper context and just saying that they're doing this outlandish thing. But it's like, I don't know what that coach had in mind. Maybe it makes perfectly logical sense, right? And it's just, I don't know what those conversations are like or what that blood work came back as or what this was or what that was. So again, context is always necessary. But again, we're back to the idea and the reality of customizing, right,
Mhm.
per the actual individual and their needs at this particular time. And if I were to put some sort of, overarching theme on this, it wouldn't even be macros versus meal plans or it would just be, genuinely speaking, like, are you really customizing anything for your clients when you're saying this is the way that it should be done, or when you're
Yeah,
saying this is what works, right?
exactly.
Or when you're saying this is bad, why is this bad? Because you don't like it? Well, I can't tell what people eat. Well, that means that you're fucking lazy. And instead of looking into their fucking, tracking app that they're using, you're just saying, here's macros, track them. You can have more fucking insight than that. I know exactly, and this is something that I saw recently where somebody's like, well, I don't really know what they're eating, so it's a variable, and I can't help them if their digestion goes wrong or whatever. There's a reason why I think macros is superior to a meal plan because I know exactly what the fuck you're eating all
Mhm.
the time to the fucking 10th degree. Like I can see everything. And if I wanted to, even during contest prep, which it's fucking, you better be logging everything down to the fucking gram that passes through those lips. Oh, but this is a low calorie sauce. I don't give a shit. Log it so that I can see what's going on, especially if we're at whatever point we are. And I think we should be leaner and we're behind the curve. Then fucking log everything that goes through there, right? I've even had people where we legitimately manage the sodium and the potassium, which doesn't always, it's not something that I do regularly. It didn't really work out in this case either. But it was like, dude, I want you to log every ounce of sodium you have. I want you to log every ounce of potassium you have, including from the low salt, the fucking the regular salt that we're having. Like, you could be so accurate and so concise with that it's like there's no variable left unturned when you're tracking your macros, especially
Mhm.
when you're using the right app to do so. And then the other thing with the tracking is always like, well, there's inaccuracies with some of the inputs. It's like, again, you're using the wrong app. You're being a lazy coach. You're not looking into this thing that could serve so many people, right? In such a positive way. And you're just saying, like, oh, my Fitness Pal, which is the most well-known app as far as tracking is concerned, has a user database where a lot of the information is wrong. That's why we don't use My Fitness Pal. That's why Tim fucking hates My Fitness Pal for years now, is because it's entirely inaccurate. But again, not, or at least trying to put myself on a pedestal here, right? Not being a lazy coach, I looked and looked and looked and found, because you've been there. Like I've gone from app to app to app with clients, right?
Mhm.
Trying to find the one that works the best. In Chronometer, right? That hasn't really been around too long relative to some of these other apps, right? Nailed it on the head with some of the things that they do. And it allows us to be able to get all this good quality information. But again, it just comes back to the reality of not being complacent with just some idea where it's like, what you're really saying is, this is the easiest for me as a coach. So this is what we're going to do, right? Unfortunately, that doesn't work for everybody, period.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that also comes down to just overall labeling things as good, best, or bad, or worst, or whatever, um, isn't the best, isn't a good approach. Because then it does come back to the ego of coaches and finding a good coach for you. And with the ego thing, like even clients too, athletes who are competitors or whatever, just like getting rid of the ego, just focusing on what your coach is telling you to do and not looking left and right. Because if you have a good coach, that shouldn't, there's no reason for you to look left and right. What's better? What's worse? Should I be doing that? Should I be doing this? And it'll come back to the ego, I think, too, when with the coaches and with clients too.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So
Anything else to
I
add?
no, I feel like I spit a lot of hot fire on this one. And all I had today was a few cups of coffee, and I'm using this new coffee cup that's tiny. So I've only had like 3 cups of this tiny coffee. No fucking no tropics, no Adderall, no fucking feel
Yeah.
free, no stimulants. And I'm fucking on it, man. I feel good. I feel good. I might go to the gym
Today's
today.
today's a good today's a good brain day for Tim. Oh, I have to train.
Yeah.
Um, alrighty. Nothing else to add. Shall we wrap it up?
Yes, ma'am.
Alrighty, thank you guys for listening. If you got something out of this, share with a friend. If you're interested in working with either of us, links are below.
Me right now, though, please, because Marina gets all the fucking inquiries on the fucking thing, and I'm starting to feel a little
Guys,
left
I'm
out.
on a roll. Don't break my streak. Alrighty, we'll catch you guys next week.